doing today?
Wonderful.
Great.
How you doing, Kwani? You got a little cold or something?
No, just, it was social, so it may have a little raspy voice, but it's okay. At least I still have a voice. I wasn't yelling too much. But let's talk about the Celtics. They're now 6-3 overall. They're still really figuring out their rhythm, but they just came off of 2 back-to-back wins, which shows that the momentum hopefully is building. What have you two gathered from their last few games?
They're figuring out how to win games. I mean, I don't think the games are all that aesthetically pleasing right now, these last couple of games. But they're finding a way to just stack them wins. And at this point in the season, and you're kind of going through this self-discovery phase, which clearly, as you pointed out, Kwani, they're kind of still in that phase. You just got to find ways to win games, no matter how you do it. They're finding ways to give our good friend Al Horford a little bit of load management along the way. They're finding ways to add some faces that we don't really talk a whole lot about into the mix. Guys like Sam Hauser, who's coming up doing some nice things for them. And then you got your established, go-to guys, Jaylen Brown and Tatum, who are, again, showcasing why they're one of, if not the best 1-2 punch in the NBA. So a lot of positives that there can certainly build on, but there's some clear problems with this roster still. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. But so far, they're doing all right. They're doing all right.
Yeah, I mean, 6-3 with 2 overtime losses to the Cavaliers. Nothing to, be ashamed of, because the Cavaliers are off to a really hot start. I think they're 7-1. Both of those games they could have won. So they really were legitimately whipped once. That Chicago game, I just think the defense has to get better. They're outscoring teams at this point, 123, 119 against the Bulls, 133, 118 against the Knicks. Obviously the record 27 3-pointers. But they're getting it done. And at this point, you can't argue with that, because they could be 3-6. They could be kind of in the hole. They could be the Warriors at this point. They could be other teams that are struggling out the gate. So you got to give them some credit for figuring out ways to win. But I just think they got a lot to work on the defense. They got to figure out what to do at the center position, rebounding, little things like that. But I think they're coming together. I think that they're this is what the point that if they could have said, hey, we will be 6-3, that, we'll be good. I think they would take that, right? They would take that after 9 games. Obviously, they would want to be 9-0 or whatever. But I just think 2 overtime losses, they went through the gauntlet. They went through a back-to-back. I thought that New York game was going to be really tricky, because the Knicks are not slouches anymore. Obviously, Randall, Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, they had some guys, and they won the night before Philadelphia, but they came back and kind of pulled away in the fourth quarter. And that's also the thing I'm encouraged about. Fourth quarter execution. They could have, maybe last year they would have lost that New York game. I think it was down to 89-88, and the Celtics pulled away in the fourth quarter. They made the plays, they hit the shots. They did what they're supposed to do. And then against Chicago, too, when the Bulls came down within 2 and they got hot. So I think it's encouraging that they're learning how to pull out games in the fourth quarter.
And Sherrod, you mentioned Jayson Tatum, and right now he's one of the few players in the league that are averaging over 30 points per game. What have you two seen from his game, not only for the last 2 games, but just over this season? How has he been building upon that growth?
You got it, Gary.
What, Jalen and Jayson?
No, Tatum specifically.
Oh,
just
Tatum.
Averaging 30 points per game on average.
Got you.
Over 30, yeah.
I think what he's doing is he is being more assertive in other areas besides scoring. The shot's not always going to go down. I was very impressed the other day with his offensive rebound, to give them an extra possession, to get to the free throw line when the Bulls, if they get that board, would have had the ball down 2 with DeRozan hot. And then he got a block shot on the next possession to Patrick Williams. All-stars, great players, they do the little things. It's not just scoring the ball. It is, rebounding, get block, defense, all types of little things. And I think that that's what, Jayson is doing at this point. He's learning that. He's learning, take my game to another level, okay? Yeah, it's great. I'm averaging 30 points a game, but how many boards? 12 boards the other night. I just think Jayson is really turned himself into a complete player.
Yeah, and that's the key to him. I mean, I talk about top 5 Tatum, and we're seeing that way more often than we've done in the past. And the reason why that is because he's figured out how to not just make an impact at both ends of the floor, but make an impact consistently at both ends of the floor. And it's not the same thing night in, night out. Some nights offensively, he's not shooting the ball well, but he's finding ways to get to the line. Other nights defensively, if his guy might have it going a little bit, Jayson is doing his part as a rebounder, as a guy that deflects passes, a guy that is finding a way to put his imprint at both ends of the floor. And that's what the top players at his position, and frankly, the top players in general, are capable of doing. If you want to be taken seriously in the whole MVP conversation, which is something Tatum, he absolutely wants that to be the case. This is how you do it. You become someone who can dominate games at both ends of the floor so that no matter how the game is going on that particular night for you, you still have the ability to put a significant imprint on its outcome with your play.
And with that being said, along the lines of his growth, he's right now shooting 50% overall, 90.4% from the free throw line and 38% from three. So again, still early on in the season, but do you guys think that he is on track and can be a 50, 40, 90 player?
No. I don't think so. I think his shooting from the field is going to drop a little bit just because he takes such a high volume amount of shots. But shooting better than 40% from 3-point land and shooting better than 90 from the free throw line, I absolutely think that's within his skill set. But I don't think that he's going to be able to shoot as well from the field going forward for the season, simply just because he takes too many damn shots. And that's not a knock on him. That's just the reality. You look at the guys who typically are in that 50, 40, 90 category. They're not high volume shooters. They're guys that take a decent amount of shots, but they're not taking 20, 23, 24 shots a game, which Jayson is going to consistently do this season over the course of the season. So, yeah, it's great to talk about it. And it's great that he's going to, I think, at least make some run towards that. I think at the end of the day, he's going to be a guy that's going to shoot high 40s from the field and from 3-point land, and also shoot around 90% from the line.
Yeah, I think it's something he can shoot for. I'll be, obviously the 50% from I think 47, 48 is a good number for him to shoot for because of that 3-point shot. If he was shooting a lot, mid-range and things like that, like a DeMar DeRozan who doesn't shoot a lot of threes, I think would have a better chance at that. And also Jayson needs to improve his free throw shooting. He's a good free throw shooter. He's not a great free throw shooter. You want him for as many times he's going to get to the line to be in that 90% tile. There's times he just doesn't, it's obvious, it doesn't seem like he concentrates. That first free throw, he'll miss it, or whatever. And then he'll come back, hit the second one. So he tightened up the free throw shooting. I think he can be a 40% three-point shooter, but I think if he'll take 37, 38. But if there was a, like 48, 38, 88, I think he'd have a shot. But
look at you lowering standards. No.
50, 40, 90. I think I said, like you said, Sherrod, he'd have to have definitely a more of a mark from the mid-range and from, in the paint as opposed to the 3 points. Sometimes he falls in love with the 3-point shot.
So the team overall, right now, they're leading the league with obviously 9 games played. They're at 118.8 points per game. What does this say about the team? We've talked about how the depth has been an issue over the last year. Do you think that this is a sign of an improvement overall for the Celtics?
Yeah, I think the offense is never going to be an issue. It's that defense. But I think Jayson is at a nice high. He is better than he was last year at this early point. And then Jalen has really stepped his game up. And then I think they've finally surrounded those guys with some shooters. Sam Hauser can shoot. Malcolm Brogdon can shoot. They have guys, Horford on occasion, but Horford can score at the rim. Marcus Smart, obviously, he's always going to be the streaky guy. I don't think he's ever going to be, he's off to a slow start, but he can hit an occasional shot. But I think the addition of Hauser and Brogdon has really opened up the floor and helped their shooting because of both of those guys' 3-point threats. They finally, and I said, it could have been maybe Peyton Pritchard, and maybe if Peyton is getting those minutes, he might be that guy. And then Derek White stepped up too. I don't want to forget about him, but I think they have gotten improved shooting around Jayson and Jaylen, what makes their offense even more dangerous. And just wait till Robert Williams comes back and they're able to get a lot of easy buckets from alley-oops and dives at the rim. So I think the sky's the limit for the offense. The issue I have, or I think they should have, is the defense. Shutting guys down, not letting guys go for too much. You know, last night against the Knicks, 3 20-plus point scores. You know, they let guys go. You know, they had a chance in the second quarter to kind of pull away. I think they were up by 12, and then they let the Knicks go a little bit crazy. And then it becomes a tussle until midway through the fourth quarter. So things are tuned up on the defense. But I think the offense is fine because they got shooters.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, that's how you realize that what their struggles with defensively aren't just one or two guys. It's a team-wide epidemic. When you look at last night, 3 guys go over 20. You know, you go back to that Cleveland game, that the first one where they had not one but 2 guys that dropped 41 on them, which should never, ever happen against an elite team defensively like they've been for so many years. And that's why, you know, I'm concerned about how quickly that's going to come together. And I know not having Rob is a big part of that. But my concern with this group is that they almost embrace the fact that they're not as good defensively and aren't necessarily fighting through that pull that you have from time to time to just kind of go with the flow, because they know, and we've seen it, they can outscore damn near every team in the NBA. They've got that kind of firepower. You know, Sam Hauser is doing what you're supposed to do, is knock down open shots. Those open shots create more open shots for Tatum, which creates more opportunities for Jaylen Brown. You just go down the line, and there's that trickle down effect with that. But my concern is that when Rob comes back, that there might be this almost collective, we good now. Rob's got our back. So you know what? That turnstile defense we were playing, that Olay defense, we're good now because we got Rob back there. He's going to erase all that. And that's a problem that I have, and a concern I have with this team. I don't know how locked in they're going to be to embrace Rob when he comes back. And in some respects, follow his lead. Guard your yard. Be a better individual defender. That's, to me, again, at this point, that's the biggest pressing concern, I think, if you are Joe Mazzulla and you're thinking about different ways that you can continue to build off success and have it sustainable throughout the course of the season. That has to be your number one concern right now.
So that being said, though, do you think they can sustain that high level offensively?
Yeah, I do. And I say that with some bit of hesitancy, only because some of the key players that are part of this new high-powered offense are in roles they've never had before. I mean, Sam Hauser the other night, I think like 17, 18 points. You're not going to get that consistently from him. He's going to have nights where he's going to miss 3 or 4 shots he normally makes. And to me, I'm not concerned about that particular game. I'm concerned about the lingering effect of that game going forward. Is he going to be able to have a rough night, brush it aside, and just get back on a horse and ride off? Veteran players are able to do that. Young fellas, it takes them a little bit of time to kind of build up the muscle memory to be able to withstand tough times and then just take off. And you start looking at their roster, they've got a couple of guys that kind of fit in that mode. And again, I think the tools are all there for them to be a high-powered offense and maintain themselves as the highest scoring team in the NBA. I'm just concerned about what happens when they hit a lull offensively, lose a couple of games because they can't stop anybody. How are they going to just snap themselves out of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be fine. I think the offense will be fine. I think they'll be able to maintain it because obviously you have 2 elite scorers, and then you have guys like Brogdon, who has been a plus scorer in other places, Milwaukee and Indiana. Hauser, I think, is a guy that is turning himself into an elite shooter, and he's going to be open a lot because defense are going to be flexing on Jayson and Jaylen. So I think that they'll be fine. I don't think the offense is to be is something to worry about at this point, because I just think they have enough cohesion, ball movement to be able to score points and be able to take advantage of mismatches and to be able to go at certain guys. And then they have guys like scrappy guys like Griffin and Vonleh, and even, on occasion, Luke Cornett to, pick up a loose ball and put it in or dunk at the rim, things like that. And I said, Robert will help so much offensively also because he'll give them more easy points. That's the thing. You want right now they're working too hard for their points because they don't have that rim runner. They don't have that easy guy who can score at the rim. When Robert gets back, they'll be able to get 4 or 5 baskets a game easier, because of his presence.
And then with that being said, do you think that'll be enough to sustain them in the East? And obviously we're going to get into the defensive struggles a little bit more, but offensively, is that enough for this conference?
I think right now, I think they're okay. Milwaukee's off to a 9-0 start. Cleveland looks like they're going to be a factor here, more than just like the 6th seed. Cleveland looks like they can go for one of the top 3 seeds at this point. Obviously, they're going to hit their ruts. And, the East is going to be treacherous. I mean, Miami's going to get it together. Brooklyn seems to be playing better now, all their issues. The Knicks, who knows? Toronto, Chicago. The Celtics seen them twice already. Chicago is a tough club. And, if they ever get Lonzo Ball back, and they get everything straight, I think they can be a factor. So the East is a minefield. There's no, you can look at Orlando and they'll start slipping. And Charlotte looks like, but, Indiana beat Miami the other night. Indiana is not to be, Detroit, Sherrod's buddies up there in Detroit. They can, the Celtics have them twice in the next 3 or 4 days. They could sneak up and bite you. So there is no slouch in the East. There's going to be some teams that don't show up on certain nights, but the East is really balanced and really has that parity that the NBA has been seeking, because you'll look at, Orlando just beat Golden State the other night. They're a young team, but the Celtics already saw them. Detroit. And those are supposed to be, Indiana's supposed to be in some kind of rebuild, right? They're supposed to be blowing it up, and they play hard, so it's going to be tough in the East. I mean, this is not going to be, I think, a season where the Celtics win 60 games or something. Like, they're going to struggle at times because, some of these teams will sneak up and bite you. But I think at this point, they're holding their own. They're third we're 10% through the season. But I think they just keep trying to maintain, win. Don't avoid, as we saw in the early going last year, the 6 losses in 8 games. Avoid the ruts, right? They lost 2 in a row. They came back and won 2 in a row. Like, just keep trying to avoid the ruts, win most of your games.
Yeah, and for them, a big part of finding their way through all this is developing the rotations and developing chemistry. Even though they brought a lot of key guys back from last season, there's still, every year is a new season, new team, and new expectations. And this is really the first time for a lot of those guys where they're dealing with not just being one of the favorites, but by virtue of going to the NBA Finals a year ago, people want to be where you were. People see you as almost like the gold standard, if you will, in the East. Now, obviously, Milwaukee will have a lot to say with that. 1, because of their 9-0 start this year, and 2, because they did not have Chris Middleton in the postseason last year, which obviously was detrimental to their chances of going far. But the Celtics have to really, again, improve in so many different areas. But the biggest area of improvement is just getting to know one another, playing with a certain balance and chemistry and togetherness that I think they've done a pretty good job of that so far. I love the fact that Malcolm Brogdon has really been kind of the glue guy for that entire team. I think him coming off the bench solidifies that second unit, which is scoring more than they normally do. And I think it gives a certain level of comfort to the starters, because now, if you don't get off to a great start, there's a pretty good chance somebody on that second unit is going to come in and turn things around. Whereas last year, if you struggled early on, you looking over at Ime like, okay, when we get back in the game, you like that little kid who's double dutching. You step out, you just ready to jump back in. That's how you got to do. Oh, stop, Gary. Stop. Mr. Lower the standards for 50, 40, 90. Let's go with 47, 48, 88. Come on, man. Can't let that slide.
That's right.
Those standards. Come on.
We all can't be 50, 40, 90 guys in life like you, Sherrod. We all can't,
And that's too bad.
That's too bad.
I'm sorry for you. You have my sympathy.
God.
There's a Hallmark card with your name on it.
Go get this dude.
Whose man's? Anyway,
got some bills to pay soon or something.
Yeah, coming soon. But before we pay those bills, pick and roll, a quick little game question for you guys. Which has been a bigger surprise, the Celtics' offensive success or the defensive struggles?
Defensive struggles for me. I thought they'd be a little bit better than this. I knew that without Rob, they would take a little bit of a step back, but they look putrid at times. I mean, it really, I mean, they've instituted the Olay/easy pass defense damn near every game for way too many stretches that shouldn't happen. They have to get better at that end of the floor. They have to. And obviously Rob will help, but until he returns, they need to be better than what we've seen so far.
I think I'm going to take the offense. The defense, I'm going to say, has obviously not been good. It's been below average. But I also think they've ran into some really hot shooters. I think that, like, Mitchell and, like, guys who just had uncharacteristically great nights. And that's what they have to stop. Some of the in-game adjustments I'm a little disappointed with, like going under the screen on Mitchell, or the first quarter against Cleveland at Cleveland, letting Garland just kind of get what he wanted, and coming off I think he missed 6 games with the eye injury, comes back and scores 7 or 14 points in the first quarter just with open threes. Like, that can't happen. That's the stuff that I think is disappointing. Overall, I think the defense can be better, and I think they're improving, but it's just those lapses. The opening quarter against you let this guy get going, you fall behind by 11, and and that just kind of set the tone for the game. They end up coming back and then blowing a 12-point lead in the second half. But you can't let guys just get comfortable in this league, especially dudes who can score. And the Celtics sometimes let, like, Shirazo with the Matador defense, Olay defense, let guys get way too comfortable or stick too much to the scouting report or don't read the scouting report or whatever, and let guys get comfortable. And then, DeRozan 46 the other night. The good thing about that is they shut everybody else down. And I think the way people try to beat the Bulls is because DeRozan's not going to shoot a lot of threes, is let DeRozan go off and try to shut down Levine. And Vucevic got hot in the fourth quarter, but there wasn't a guy who added 35. Like, they were able to get over simply because they just maintained. And, DeRozan made some tough shots. I don't think their defense on him was terrible. I just think the dude's a shot maker, and he's a tough shot maker, and that's what he does for a living. That's why he just got to 20,000 point mark. So I think I'm more surprised with the offense. I just think they've run into some hot shooters, but I also think the lapses is what is I thought is what is wrong, like what they shouldn't be doing. That's the thing that they got to avoid is the major issue.
So we did talk about their defensive struggles early on right now, but what do you two think is the best way to start fixing? We talked about this a little bit, but fixing that defensive gap that they have right now, other than Rob Williams, because that's not a fair answer just yet.
Yeah. I would say effort. Biggest thing. I don't think they give nearly as much effort and focus at that end of the floor as they do offensively. And that, it's easy to point out and say, well, it starts with Marcus Smart. After all, he's a defensive player of the year. And I would say it probably starts with Jayson Tatum because he's their best player. And if he shows, I think, the ability to do more things at that end of the floor, I think it does have the potential to have a trickle-down effect to the other guys. And I think Tatum is trending in that direction. I thought he made a lot of really good plays in his last game and the game before that at the defensive end of the floor. And they're going to need that. But more importantly, they're going to need others to try to emulate that and bake that into their game when they get out on the floor. Because as Ari pointed out earlier, opponents are getting too many damn wide-open shots. You can't. Guys in this league are just too damn good. Even the mediocre players in the league are still good enough to knock down open shots. And the Celtics, I think, are really bad at giving guys confidence. Karis LeVert, who dropped 41 on the Celtics, had, I think, 1 point in his next game out. How the hell does that happen? Drop 41 and then drop 1 the next night? Celtics had a lot to do with that with their porous defense, but more importantly, they have this ability to, unfortunately, let guys get going and let them get confident as the game progresses. And they got to shut the valve off from the jump. And so that's, again, I think there has to be a little bit more attention paid to making sure they're doing those type of things.
Yeah, I think that technique, also like Sherrod said, effort, but also just, reading the scouting reports and not letting starting off games with that like, let's stop them intensity, not letting guys get too comfortable too easy. And sometimes better communication, talking more on defense, not only Grant and Marcus, but other guys stepping up, guys being more engaged defensively. And number one, not letting offense affect defense. A missed shot, a bad call, get back on D, talk to the official when there's a timeout, the next stoppage. Do not talk to him, try to argue the call during when the other team is running a fast break. Don't let missed shots and, oh, man, that was my shot. I should have hit that. But you're a half second slow to get back on defense, and then suddenly your dude's hitting a three. Like, you got to be better than that. They have to be sharper. Like, I think they can be, but the sharpening up those little things, because it's not big thing. I don't think it's like they're Brooklyn where they just don't have the personnel to defend. I think it's a little thing. I said, getting back on D, going over screens and not under screens. And second, getting that defensive rebound, not giving teams extra possessions so they can score, hitting the boards. That's very important. Hustling for those 50-50 balls. All the little things I think need to improve.
Gary, Sherrod said that he thought it was Tatum that kind of has to step up when you talk about who takes the lead defensively. Who do you think the Celtics need to take the lead?
Yeah, I think Tatum. And I also think Marcus needs to get back to his Defensive Player of the Year form, set the tone. Smart. It's like Tatum wasn't guarding Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell. You know what I'm saying? Like, Smart needs to step up. And I know his shot isn't falling, so I know that's probably one of the reasons that's kind of got him off a little bit. But he's got to be that Defensive Player of the Year type guy, that agitator, getting steals, diving for balls, making it uncomfortable. You can't let these guys get too comfortable, because the guys who are scoring, are mostly Garland, DeRozan, Mitchell, are mostly guard. Brunson got his, the other night, against the Knicks. So I think Marcus needs to be that central guy. He's the leader of the defense, and he'll tell you that.
All right, so looking up ahead to the schedule, their next opponent are the Memphis Grizzlies. As I mentioned, the Celtics are obviously leading the league in points per game, and the Grizzlies are right behind them. So what are your expectations for this game, knowing that we have two offensive leaders going head-to-head?
Buckets. Lots of buckets. And again, I both teams do it in their own way. And I think the Celtics, clearly this is a Memphis team. They've had some success. So they both won both games last year. Tatum, I think, had over 30 points in each of those games. The Celtics, I believe, shot better than 50% in each of those games. So all the stars are aligning for the Celtics to basically build off of what they've already done of late this season, and that's score a ton of points. Mm-hmm. Memphis, again, to me, their strength is the waves in which they can hit you. They've got guys who are really very much fall into the bucket of two-way talent. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be important for the Celtics to find ways to take advantage of whatever their shortcomings are and work at mismatches. I mean, Ja Morant, no disrespect, but if Marcus Smart has the ball in a block and you guard him, barbecue chicken, that will be you. So that's going to be key. But this may be the game where the Celtics defense, which we've talked a lot about, has to break out. They have to be better than their numbers suggest if they're going to win this game.
Yeah, I think it could be another potential shootout, and Ja, licks his chops against defenses like the Celtics if they don't step up. So, and then they also got guys like Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks, Steven Adams, pushing dudes around in the paint. They don't have Kyle Anderson anymore. He signed with Minnesota. Jaren Jackson Jr. is out. So they're missing some pieces. But they got guys who can put the ball in the hoop other than Ja. So, Zaire Williams is a guy I like, kind of a swing man, 3-and-D guy. So they got personnel. They got a young team. It all depends. We'll see. The interesting part about it is Memphis plays Sunday night against the Wizards at home. So they're coming off a back-to-back, even though it's at home. I'm sure they'll have energy, but the Celtics will have a day of rest, a chance to probably check out that game. I'm sure they're in Memphis as we speak, trying to, check out, get some little scouting report on how that game goes and just keep it, they got to keep it close early. Don't fall behind. Don't let Ja go for 20 in the first quarter. And they could have a good shot of winning that game. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a shootout, 2 high-scoring teams, 2 offenses, 2 lots of great players on the floor. So it's going to be an entertaining game. Get your popcorn ready.
Okay. So we've talked about the growing pains that the Celtics are going through, not as extreme, but they are going through, especially on the defensive end. And our partners at Indeed, they know the same thing can apply to some small businesses. And rapid growth for your business doesn't have to come with growing pains if you use Indeed. And when you have ambitious hiring goals, you need a partner to help you get you there. So you need Indeed. Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites looking for the right candidates with the right skills, you can do it all with Indeed.com. Find the top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like the Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. So if you hate waiting, Indeed's data actually shows that 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match the job description the moment that you sponsor a job. So another feature that they have in addition to the instant match is the virtual interview, which basically, instead of making your candidates jump through hoops, their virtual interview tool means that you can do the nothing, no download, just click and talk to them. So they don't have to use an outside party to talk to them and figure out if they're the right candidate for your job. With virtual interviews, you can indeed save some time. You can schedule, message, interview all of the top talent in one place, and Indeed makes it easy to connect with their applicants. No need to install anything extra. Like I said, Indeed's virtual interview tool takes care of that for you. So if you're looking to hire for your business, Indeed knows that as you grow your small business, you're trying to save some money as well, especially in this economy. So here at the A-List podcast, we've got you covered a little bit. Indeed.com/A-List is where you can start hiring right now. And that's why when you sponsor a job post, you're going to only pay for quality applications from their resume of databases in their database that match, again, the job description that you're looking for. Again, Indeed.com/A-List. Need to hire, you need Indeed. So we've talked about the Celtics, but every week now we've talked about another team on the Eastern Conference, and that is the Brooklyn Nets, which I couldn't stop saying their name last week. So let's look at the Kyrie situation, which has since escalated since the last episode. Kyrie is now suspended for no less than 5 games. And now, even though he did issue the apology that the Brooklyn Nets insisted that he make, clearly it didn't seem sincere enough, and they have another set of action items before he's able to actually play again in the league. What do you two make of the fact that the Nets took so long to implement this punishment? And also, do you think the list of things that they gave him to do is enough? There's some sensitivity training there. If you don't know, there's like a few things that he has to fulfill before he's back.
Got it, G.
I'm not surprised. I think the Nets were trying to wait for Kyrie to come to his senses and make a full-fledged apology. And once he didn't, they kept him from the media for a couple of days. And so it was just like, okay, well, take some time, think about it. I'm sure people in the organization were talking to him. And then they're like, okay, now you can talk to the media. And so that press conference that he had, I think after a practice, was the one I think that set everything off, that he didn't apologize. He wouldn't unequivocally say he wasn't anti-Semitic. He kind of, he was playing the riddle game as Kyrie tends to do. And the guess what I'm really talking about game. I know more than you. And I'm not going to let you know what I'm thinking. So, I mean, I think the Nets are tired of it. The league is getting tired of it. And I think that they, as our friend our good buddy Vince Goodwill reported, there's 6 conditions for which he could come back. Mm-hmm. And, it was meeting with the Anti-Defamation League, meeting with owner Joe Tsai. Apparently he wasn't returning his owner's, the governor, I don't say owner, the governor's text messages, things like that. So this is a real crossroads for Kyrie. I mean, his status in the league, he's becoming a real headache for teams. And it's obvious. I mean, it was happening in Cleveland, and suddenly it happened in Boston, and then it was like, I'm coming home, and I'm back in Brooklyn where I belong, and I'm a Jersey kid, and this is, want to know about that, and this is where I belong, and this is home, and I'm coming home. And all
stop.
Yes.
Okay, we got a little vocal.
Yeah, like all that I'm coming home, and tear jerker and all that. And
I'm coming.
It's the same old BS. Like, it's like still more drama. And it's just like, come on, man. Like, it's got to end. Remember, you're supposed to go into this year. I'm about hoop. I'm trying to, I'm serious. Okay, the vaccination stuff is over, then this stuff comes up. And it's just sort of like, if it's not one thing, it's another. So this is his career, I believe, is on the line, because there's plenty of talented dudes on the street in the NBA in our history we know that just couldn't act right, can't get right. And the league was like, you know what? Go overseas with that, go to China, do something else, man, because he's a headache. He's becoming a headache. And he's got to realize that if now if you want to be a political leader, you want to lead people, you want to do something off the floor and put your focus towards something different, then that's cool. And just say, you know what, basketball ain't me, but you want to be a ball player and you want to get along with people. And there's plenty of people from all nationalities, races, orientations, or whatever that go to NBA games and put money in the league's pocket. There's a certain amount of cooperation you have to do. You don't have to like everybody you work with, but you got to be civil and respectful to everybody you work with. So can Kyrie be that? Is he going to cause more trouble? The Nets have won the 2 games that he wasn't there. How much of an emotional headache is that for your teammates? So, I was surprised that I think the Nets wanted to give him some time and for himself to figure it out. And once he didn't, they're like, we're going to figure this out for you. So it was like your parent, you keep doing this. You keep doing this. You want me to go upstairs and
don't make me get my belt.
Yeah, don't make do you want me to come up here and handle things?
Think about it.
No. So that's the thing. I think that the Nets were finally okay, God, we didn't give you enough chances, and you're on an expiring contract. So we got to pay you, but we ain't paying you past this year. So you ain't on no Kevin Durant deal. So this is your last year here anyway. So at this point, they're not the Nets aren't tripping. And, they want to win, but they also want to get rid of these headaches.
Oh, so yeah.
I think that I understood their stance.
Wow. Here's the thing. Kyrie is an incredibly talented player, but we all know that as you run the race of life, if you don't pay attention, next thing you know, Father Time is right next to you. And Kyrie's not there, but the talent that he has displayed throughout his career is becoming less worth the headaches that come attached with joining forces with Kyrie. And that's the problem that he has right now. Brooklyn came to the realization that, you know what, he's incredibly talented, but he is leaving us very little choice but to crack down on him. And because he's not just acting out, he's having a debilitating impact on the franchise. When you start doing some of the things that Kyrie has done, and let's be honest, and let's keep it 100. Of all the NBA cities, and there's never a good NBA city to be anti-Semitic in, but if there was a city that is probably the worst place to be anti-Semitic, it's Brooklyn. That borough, 1 out of every 4 people in Brooklyn is Jewish. That's the absolute worst place on the NBA circuit to do something like this, or to even have any any type of attachment or association with anti-Semitic rhetoric. And Kyrie,
also, a great man did once say, "Spread love, it's the Brooklyn way." So that's another.
Who said that?
I said a great man once said. Biggie.
Who said that?
I thought you said my uncle Pookie.
No.
That sounds like something Unc said. It is but that Kyrie, it's the last place on the planet where you would want to, or you would even entertain something like that. And the worst part about it for Kyrie was that he had multiple opportunities, and this is what the Nets were doing. They're like, okay, you know what? He's wrong. I think we kind of knows he's wrong, but now he has a chance to just set the record straight if there was some confusion. And every opportunity he had to set the record straight, he refused to address the most basic question: are you anti-Semitic? Are you going to disavow people who? And he was just, he didn't answer the question. He did the second job, bob and weave. Kyrie, we're not on the court. You ain't breaking my ankles down in this one.
Mm-hmm.
You can't break ankles on this one. You have to be real. And the Nets felt, okay, we're going to suspend you at least 5 games. We're going to come up with these kind of rules that we need you to do before you can come back. And with Kyrie, I know we've talked about this before, but would anybody be shocked if Kyrie just decides to say, the hell with this, I'm done. Nike done already cut me loose. Yeah. Y'all don't want me, at least not the way I want to be wanted. I'm just going to go and do Kyrie now. Would not be surprised. I would be disappointed because I still think Kyrie, from a basketball standpoint, has a lot to contribute. And to me, from a personal growth standpoint, if he can finally actually listen to someone besides himself on these type of matters, that would be great. And as Gary pointed out earlier, Vincent Goodwill, who had the first to write about like the rules that Kyrie has to abide by before he can get back, I'm not convinced Kyrie is willing to do all that, because part of that involves getting treatment. And while I think from a tangible standpoint it's possible, but can he philosophically allow himself to open up to that process and walk through that process and hopefully come out on the other end a better person? I don't know. And I base that simply on the track record that everywhere Kyrie has gone, there has been a dumpster fire left behind. Mm-hmm. And if you look at all the common denominators, he's it. Can he change? I don't know. I don't have a feel one way or the other on that.
I think it's also telling, though, despite us feeling as though it was just the common sense decision to apologize and, complete the steps so he can be reinstated. When you look at NBA Twitter, free Kyrie Irving and I stand with Kyrie have been the 2 top trends over the last few days, which, again, I think highlights the fact that there are people that do agree with what he said. And I know that I will say, I think there are definitely some people that just see it from a basketball standpoint and want to see him back on the floor. But looking at the hashtag and reading some of the tweets, there are people that just genuinely agree with the stance that he had and some of the thoughts that he said, which I think just highlights a bigger overall issue of the way rhetoric can just spread, and you can realize that people are actually on board with it, which is honestly a bit scary too.
Well, it's a little bit scary, but the issue that I have with Kyrie is that if you listen to everything he says, you will easily be able to pick out bits and pieces that make sense, bits and pieces that have a uplifting, grounded narrative to them. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't allow himself to explain what he stands with and what he stands against. He just lets all that stuff just kind of morph together and leave you no choice but to believe he stands for all that stuff. And if that's the case, this is what happens when you don't explain with clear clarity what the hell you stand for. And that was the frustrating part about his press conference a couple Saturdays ago, when there were multiple opportunities for him to be able to explain, if he can, why he felt the need to promote that particular piece of cinema. He never explained it. And partly, I think, it was because he hadn't seen the movie. Mm-hmm. In part because he knew nothing other than, he explained that, I did a search, I put in a word, this came up, and I promoted it. And, for someone who wants you to believe he's really smart and intelligent. And I think, and I put it this way, there are those who think Kyrie is just full of, and there's those who think he's the smartest man alive. And I see him as being somewhere in the middle, because I don't think he's nearly as smart as he thinks he is, but he's not nearly as buffoonish as some people want to make him out to be. There is a certain element of intellect to what he does and how he thinks. I just think that he hasn't, but what he doesn't do a good enough job of is explaining his position, and keeping his position clear. I mean, one minute he's saying that, he's got an army of followers, and the next minute he's just like, I'm only one person. I can't control what others do. And it's like, how can you be an influencer and yet not have influence? I mean, I don't see how that works. And unfortunately, we find that is a common thread with Kyrie, that dynamic of confusion in what he says, because literally he will be saying the two opposite things about himself, and you're left to decide, wait, what the hell is going on here? So anyway.
And another thing to note is when he talked about, again, and we said this last week, not promoting the film, it turns out that specific documentary just jumped in the charts, whether it's on Barnes & Noble, where it ended up 69 on one of the best-selling book lists, and then on Apple Books, it's now number 9 in the top audiobook. So again, whether he decided to or not, he was promoting this film. But another thing, Gary, that you mentioned is the fact that the Nets are now 2-0 with him, and they're on the road at that with the 2 games that they've played since he's been suspended. Do you think the Nets are better off without Kyrie on the roster?
I think they're a more harmonious team with him on the roster. He's a super talent. You can't say on the
Kumbaya, my team. Kumbaya.
Yeah, a lot of singing today.
Yeah, the Mutu. So I think that they're more harmonious. I think Kevin Durant is like, see y'all now y'all see why I wanted to get traded. Like, oh, I was a bad guy in the summer. Now you see what's going on. Would you see what was happening? And
I tried to tell y'all.
He tried to tell us.
The man was crying for help and no one listened.
Definitely, I think that no, they're not a better team on the floor, but I just think having that not to deal with and that stench over them, they probably playing more free and just happier. And they got a lot of young guys, Cam Thomas and Kessler Edwards, and they got guys who like to play just like the hoop. Like, they're not all into all this. They're not trying to be Malcolm X or Minister Farrakhan. They're not doing, like, they just want to play ball. And I think if Kyrie wants to focus on political or social issues, he can freely do that. I just think he needs to make his message, like Sherrod said, more clear. Are you a black? There's been plenty of players. I mean, when we grew up in the 70s, there were plenty of players who adopted Islam, as their faith. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was formerly Lou Alcindor is one of the more famous. There's plenty. Jamal Wilkes was Keith Wilkes. Like, there was plenty of Ahmad Rashad was Bobby Green.
Chris Jackson.
Yes. Mahu Abdul Rauf. Like, there are plenty of athletes who have taken on the Muslim faith, who have taken on a different religion. Amari Stoudemire started studying this. It's okay. Yeah. There's nobody saying we can't, Kyrie, you can't be anything other than stereotypically or a conventional black man. You can do what you want. But there's a lot of confusion of like, well, what's your message, brother? Like, what are you trying to say? Because the thing about I found interesting at the press conference, the one that basically got him suspended, the 300 million ancestors line is something that a lot of people can literally relate to and be like, wow. And I think that's what kind of galvanized him with some people like, damn, Kyrie, you're right. Our people have suffered. He's right. That has nothing to do with being anti-Semitic, though. They're separate, right? So you can fight your cause. You want to free people. You want to have a situation where you're working for the voice of the voiceless. You want to help the disadvantaged. You want to help people who he felt disrespected, understandably, by this country, without question. That doesn't have anything to do with anti-Semitism. You can do that. You can be a leader for your people. If that's what you want to do, Kyrie, be a damn leader. Quit being this vaguely, generally message guy that people don't know. 1 minute he's doing the Native American thing, which is understandable. He's finding his heritage. Now he's more of a black nationalist. That's fine, but that don't mean you can still love everyone. Anti-Semitism is a sickness. It's wrong. And for me, to me, that's the problem. Like, what is your message, brother? And find a forum to relay that message. Quit thinking I'm so much deeper than everybody. I'm just so deep. I mean, I'm deeper than you. You just don't get it. Like, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But I also think that, as we've known to cover Kyrie, if you demand something from him, like an apology, he's going to be like, no.
Opposite, yeah.
Hell no. Even though it might be the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you want to just say you're sorry?
Nope.
No. F you. Like, that's what he's telling those reporters.
Yeah.
Because, be honest, he doesn't look at that scroll of reporters and see anybody who looks like us. Very few, a couple of people, Christian Wingfield, Brian Lewis, but he sees a bunch of people that he feels like he's already called the media peons.
Mm-hmm.
That he doesn't like, he doesn't have a whole lot of respect for, demanding that he apologize. So that's the wrong forum anyway for him. Instagram, okay, that was fine. Let's see what happens when he does interviews, or he just says, listen, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I apologize. We're only talking basketball. The smartest thing for him to do is probably go, yep, I'm only going to speak on ball.
Well, yeah.
Do not ask me about anything off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. But he has to come to a realization of, you want to be a leader, be a damn leader. Have a clear message, talk to young people, reach out, help the community. He's helped causes. He's done stuff off the floor.
Sure.
That's fine. That's a good thing, that people don't talk about because of this stuff. If so he's got to figure out what I want to do. What is my message? What am I trying to convey here? What is the point? Because you're not helping yourself. Like, he's hurting himself. He's hurting his career. He's hurting his team. Nobody besides the dude who wrote that book and made that documentary is benefiting off this. I'm sure that dude is like...
He is living the best life.
That dude's collecting checks at this point.
Look, you never know when your moment will come.
Exactly. So that's the only guy who's benefited off this. Everybody else is lost, including Kyrie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When we talk about the dumpster fire that is the Brooklyn Nets, reports were a few days ago that they would eventually be considering hiring Ime Udoka. So now that we've seen the chaos that's gone down in Brooklyn, do you two think that hire is still on the docket?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Their PR team can't get a break.
No, they can't, and a lot of it is their own doing. They could have easily rolled this season out, with Jacques Vaughn, or brought in somebody like Quinn Snyder, but they went for Ime, and on paper it makes a lot of sense. He's familiar with your organization. He's familiar with your core group. I mean, other than Kyrie, that's the one kind of wild card. So, but no, he's familiar with Kyrie, because Kyrie was there when he was an assistant there too. So he's worked with all your guys. Ben Simmons in Philly. So it makes a lot of sense if it was all about basketball. But that's not what this is all about. The fact that Ime's available was because of something he did that had nothing to do with bouncing a basketball. The fact that Kyrie suspended for 5 games has nothing to do with something he did on the basketball court. The drama that they have has nothing to do with the game. And yet you're hoping that because all your flawed players from a personality standpoint can put that aside and make it about the game. This is the best shot that they have of turning this thing around. This team was built, this franchise spent major money to build a championship caliber team. And they haven't gotten past the second round of damn playoffs. This is their best shot. Ime gives them their best shot because he understands the fragile nature of the core guys better than anyone who's available. And he too has something to prove. He's part of this, trying to reinvent oneself in Brooklyn. And so there's a lot of that stuff has to come into play when you're trying to figure out whether Ime is the right person for the job. I'm a little disappointed, to be candid with you, that he got back into the game this quick. As we talked about last week, and Gary made great points about how, it's hard to imagine that he's had this tremendous amount of personal growth in 5 weeks.
I think it's something that's going to happen. And, the Nets are a desperate organization. They've been trying to win for the last decade since moving to Brooklyn. They've been trying to be significant because, as you know, Kwani, you're from that area. It's still a Knicks town. Mm-hmm. Whatever the Knicks people
even
don't care about the Nets. The Nets are, just kind of a novelty. Oh, they're the other team down there. Oh, okay. It's a cool, sleek team. The uniforms and the theater lighting in a nice arena and all that. But it's like they don't have a lot of diehard New York fans. And they're trying to make a statement in a market where it is a Knicks town. So they're trying to be significant, and they're trying to figure this out. And I'm sure they've done their vetting on Ime Udoka, and they might still be doing their vetting on Ime Udoka and figuring out, okay, what exactly did he do? What happened? And, they haven't made any public statements yet, so we don't know. And I kind of think, well, if it would have happened, it would have happened already. But their full concentration could be on, quite honestly, this whole Kyrie Irving thing. But
let it die down. The
way I look at it is that, we'll see what I'm fascinated. I'm going to, getting to know Ime. He seems like not a good man. Obviously, he's a flawed man, but he seems to have some sense, even though he might have lost his head a little bit in this situation. Let's see how he reacts to this new opportunity, to the situation in Boston, whether he makes some changes or says he's going to make some changes and gets his head right in terms of, because this is his last chance, obviously. Mm-hmm. So let's see if he's done some reflection. 5-6 weeks is not a lot of time. It's kind of absurd, but this is the league that we're in, to where the Nets are desperate and they feel like, this is the man, even though it's the right guy, even though it might not be the right time.
Until next week, when we figure out what's going on in the NBA, for A. Shaw Blakely and Gary